What's going on YouTube? It's Teach back again with another video, and today we're talking about 12 NFL trades I would love to see. Now, granted, I do have to put this out as a disclaimer. By the time you're seeing this, as I'm recording relatively early as I'm about to go out of town, some of these trades might have already happened. But that being said, I still think the point of this exercise was more so not trade compensation. That's why you're not going to see picks in this video. It's more so this player could be on the move. This team has a hole. They could use them. And, outside of this very first name, Christian McCaffrey, there's really not a whole lot of superstars to go around as much as it is like you're trying to salvage a guy towards the end of his rookie deal, or this guy's worked out in this location, he needs a fresh start, or, here's a role player. He could help out, in this area of a weakness for another team. So this is not me giving you comprehensive, this guy's worth a third rounder, because I don't really think that's the interesting part of it. I think it's, hey, this team could use a wide receiver. What if we gave him this? Or in this first example, man, if Christian McCaffrey's on the move, could you just overload the Bills' offense? That's kind of what we're going for today. Talking players fits more so than anything. But that being said, some of these players might have already dealt, so these might not be the landing spots. But, kind of have some fun with me. If a player's already been dealt by the time you're seeing this, do you like where the player ended up more than my fit? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. But let me hear your takeaways on these 12 trades down below in the comment section. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. So Christian McCaffrey, all eyes on the Panthers. I didn't want to go too overboard. Robbie Anderson was originally on this list, and he was going to go to the Chargers. We're going to talk about a different wide receiver going to LA a little bit later on. But I don't want to overdo it because, Brian Burns, I think, could potentially be on the move. I mean, Terrence Marshall Jr., there's been rumors around that for a while now. But, with Robbie Anderson already being dealt, I was like, what, let's just do Christian McCaffrey. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know. It's just tough based off that contract. I'm not sure Christian McCaffrey, with the money he's owed, is necessarily a bar. I don't know if he's really doing anybody any favors there. Now, granted, the exception being the Bills can make it work cap-wise. Why not? I mean, it's this massive arms race in the AFC. Why not carry that into, mid-season football? And let's just go ahead and add him as who would be the best pure runner on that team on top of his receiving ability with a rotation with James Cook, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, that's in the backfield. And then out wide again, you have Christian McCaffrey, you have Gabe Davis, and in the slot where you can work CMC in, Khalil Shakir, Jameson Crowder once he gets back and healthy. Add CMC into that mix, Isaiah McKenzie, yep. That's scary. That is really, really a potent unit. So we'll have to figure out what, the cap situation is, how much the Panthers paying versus how much the Bills are going to be paying. But nonetheless, the reason and the motivation for this trade is if the Bills could do it, why not? I mean, it's just put more chips in the center of the table, and I think this would definitely be a move that kind of signals that. And then from, a Panthers perspective, you'd get something in return. You get some draft picks, and then plus just freeing up the money down the line, I think would be worthwhile. So let's go ahead and move on to William Jackson III. And, these names are, here in the front relatively obvious here. So this one and then plus the other one have been names I've been waiting to see traded for a little bit, especially considering William Jackson III requested the trade. But, I think Arizona's a logical landing spot. I think Kansas City could work. But at the same time, I think the Chiefs, in a lot of ways, are just confident in going about that defense and that cornerback room the way they have it constructed. Jalen Watson's been fine as a 7th-round pick, and Rashad Fenton's always been this guy they've been able to have play better than what the league view on him might be. So for whatever reason, those guys just seem to work in that defense. So I could see them being like, hey, no, our guys are fine, we're good. So honorable mention here for Kansas City. I decided to go to Arizona instead just because, you look at Byron Murphy. He had some plays last week where, he held his own on the outside. And I mean, he did that earlier this season against Devontae Adams as well. There's some matchups for his tape that are kind of impressive. And, of course, this last week it's against DK Metcalf. Earlier it's against, like I said, Devontae Adams. It's like, okay, well, if he can play on the outside or at least shadow ones, add a man press corner that fits in that Van Joseph, identity for his defense, add in a Budda Baker, okay, I'm starting to feel a little bit better about that secondary versus just having Byron Murphy and then just Budda Baker there. So it's kind of interesting. You add one more name, how it feels like a minutia of an ad, but it does add that much more assuredness, in my opinion. I think he'd be a good fit in that defense. The reason it's not working in Washington is because he doesn't want to play that much zone, and they play 64% or 66% of the time they play zone. So that's not his bread and butter, which, hey, if I was him, I'd want to go to a place that's going to let me play man-to-man. Go get a wide receiver at the line of scrimmage and play my game, play my brand of football, and that's where he'll look the best. So I think Arizona's a destination that could kind of give him that. And then from the Commander's perspective, they're not going anywhere. You might as well get whatever you can for him. It's not going to be much, especially considering the trade request has already been, publicized. But that being said, you might as well get something for him. But again, for Arizona, kind of that last bullet point, low risk, almost certainly low cost. And I think there's a decent reward potentially in the mix there. Now, granted, that does require William Jackson III getting back to where he was when he left Cincinnati as a player, but I don't rule that out. Let's move on to Robert Quinn now. And again, another obvious name here to have on the list, but I think the Rams make sense as a really solid landing spot. You look at how much better that defense got, especially in the postseason once Von Miller kicked it into gear. And right now it feels like, man, you guys need to find some sort of help for Aaron Rodgers. I thought about offensive line here because, just another disclaimer, no team is receiving a player more than once on this video. I didn't want to just have this team is looking to win the Super Bowl and the Bills are going to add everybody or, anything like that. So now there are multiple players from the same team being dealt, but I think that's more realistic to have as an expectation. But that being said, adding Robert Quinn to that Rams defense, I think just gives him one more piece off the edge. And then plus, then it's him and Leonard Floyd as a duo, and then Aaron Donald in the middle. I just think that gets you closer back to where you were last year. I remember what I was saying. Going back to the offensive line point, apologies, got off on a tangent there. There's just such few options. And I almost wonder, just because of the lack of offensive line talent that you can trust to be somebody who could play NFL football, like suit up and play on Sundays. I wonder what the trade value is, right? Like even in the training camp, there were rumors of swing tackles being dealt from the Jets down to Dallas for the cost of like a fifth or a fourth, and it's like, what, for like a third or fourth tackle? That's amazing. But it's the same reason Donovan Smith, an average tackle makes $16-18 million a year. There's so few even decent players that tackle and that interior offensive line that those guys make money and they hold value. So I didn't include any offensive line because I'm not going through rosters and picking up the sixth guard or whatever team by team, and then I don't really know what the value is going to be. So I don't know if a team's really looking to make that deal. I think Robert Quinn, again, this is the exact example. Mid round picks, day 2 value here. I think the Rams, they've been more than willing to part ways with their picks in years past. And I think this is kind of gives them that juice they need to kind of reinvigorate that defense. Now, they still need to figure out the offense and then specifically the offensive line. But buy yourself some time. Get that defense back to where it was last year. Go ahead and make a trade for Robert Quinn. Pair him up with Leonard Floyd. Give some help to Aaron Donald. And for Chicago, you're freeing up more money and you're getting more draft assets. I mean, that's been the MO the second that, Eberflus and company kind of took over. So, names escape. Ryan Poles, the GM. Ever since him and Eberflus came in, it was about shedding the current roster, and Robert Quinn would just be the next step of that. Let's move on to our next name here, Daron Payne. Did you watch the Browns try to stop the Patriots run? Yeah, they needed somebody there in the middle, and they already made the move for Deion Jones, but Deion Jones has always been more of a coverage, specialist, especially in that cover 3. Dan Quinn, the mold that he was previously known for. So I think that's more of a coverage impact type of guy. I think they need a true run stopper there in the middle. And even coming into the season, like myself and plenty of others, this is not me trying to pat myself in the back, plenty of people were saying the Browns' interior defensive line is among the weakest in the NFL. It just might not be that big of an issue when you have Myles Garrett, Davion Clowney, and I even thought Chase Winovich would be a factor in that rotation. I didn't think it would matter, but boy, has it mattered. They've just got to get better there. And, until you get Deshaun Watson back, you're right now 2-4. The only way you're going to make the playoffs is by going further in. Now, that is a risky gamble, right? Like, think about if you were playing cards and you got a bad first 3, right? Like, it's like, oh man, do I want to put money in the center of the table on a sinking ship? Most sound people would say no. But that being said, the Browns also know they have, a face card coming in a little bit, and that's Deshaun Watson. So I could see them being willing to take that risk and, take a gamble and go ahead and put more chips in the center of the table, give up assets, add a Daron Payne to that defense, and shore up a defense that has really been disappointing. Now, granted, Payne only helps on the run defense side. That's secondary, and what Joe Woods, his problems as a DC are his own. Daron Payne might not fix all that, but I think this takes this team into a step in the right direction. And if you can get to 500 before you get to Deshaun Watson coming back, you have a chance to make the playoffs. So I could see the Browns making this move, and kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier with the Commanders. You're not going anywhere. So you might as well get some. You might as well get some assets. Last year of Daron Payne's deal as well. So I don't think they were going to re-sign him. So might as well get something for him before he walks. Let's move on now to a name that after he played this well on Sunday, I don't see this happening. One, because Pittsburgh won, right? So there's a huge difference between 2-4 and 1-5. Now, granted, I think they should move on, and make some deals one way or another, because it's a team that could use more draft assets, needs more swings of the bat. But that being said, Claypool being a huge reason why Pittsburgh won last week, that makes this trade that much harder. But I mean, I even have it here on the screen, like, he would be Christian Watson, who's ready to play right now. Like, Watson was always this project, top of the second round, was a logical place for him to go. Even late one could have made sense to me, and it was just going to take time. And you've seen a little bit of that. Mostly what they're having him do right now is end arounds, get the ball in his hands, and then run goes. And that's about it, because that's all you really can ask of him right now. But Chase Claypool's that guy who's ready to play right now. And I think that it would just give this team a number one. And plus, if Randall Cobb is going to be missing any significant time, that's a dude who Rodgers has a ton of faith and confidence in. So there's a hole. There was already a hole, even with Randall Cobb playing, but now there's an even bigger one. And I think Chase Claypool could be that Packers type. He has the body mold that Green Bay has been partial to in years past. And for Pittsburgh, it's like, hey, well, if we did move on from Claypool, got a pick and return, sweet. I don't know if they're going to re-sign him long-term either. That's the other part of this equation here for Pittsburgh. So it's like, hey, maybe we could just get something for him now. And then our trio becomes George Pickens, who we love, Deontay Johnson, we've already given a 2-year extension to, and then a rookie we just drafted in Calvin Austin. And that's still a really good trio. So I think Pittsburgh's in a unique situation where they could deal with Chase Claypool and be all right. And plus, you're saving the headache of the future conversation. Are we going to extend Chase Claypool? Because that is going to be a tough one, because you've seen moments, you've seen flashes, but if he's asking for $20 million, that feels tough. But he has all the physical traits, so makes more sense, I think, from Green Bay's perspective, considering they don't have a guy right now, versus Pittsburgh, who has a lot of guys who I think can step in, and they already have potentially a number one of George Pickens and maybe two with Deontay Johnson there, or at least a 1A, 1B type of situation. So, like I said, with the win against Tampa, now Pittsburgh's 2-4, and it's a win against Tampa and Tom Brady. So that feels like it changes the complexion up to where Pittsburgh's probably not going to be sellers. But, man, if they are Chase Claypool to Green Bay, I think that would be a really nice fit. All right, next up, sticking with the wide receiver position and actually sticking in the NFC North as the destination, Kenny Golladay. I mean, I don't have to tell you anything you haven't heard before. I mean, he's been a disappointment with the Giants. So this would probably require New York eating a fair amount of the money. But, if you're Chicago, any sort of weapon you can add to the outside is an upgrade right now, because like Equinemius St. Brown is not a long-term answer. And Darnell Mooney is great, but he is the only legitimate starting wide receiver that figures to be a part of the long-term fixture, and Velus Jones, but win in different ways. Those two both do, from Kenny Golladay. And, Galladay's always been a vertical guy, and I think that's a lot of Darnell Mooney's strength, but I think they just, again, do it in different ways. Kenny Golladay was, solid speed, but can go win at the catch point, go up and get it. Mooney is straight speed and route running. So, and Galladay's route running has never been one of his strengths. So, again, winning in contrasting ways, I think it's a great way to try to diversify the portfolio of your offense. And, dude, it's just a weapon for Justin Fields. Please, Chicago, give him a shot. Because at this point, it's just not a fair evaluation. I don't think he's played well, but I don't think the team's played well. I don't think there's a whole lot to work well with, so adding a Kenny Golladay at a discounted price, at minimum, you have this year and next year to kind of figure it out and be like, can we resurrect him? Because before he went to New York, and before the injury that ended his tenure in Detroit, guy once led the NFL in receiving touchdowns. Again, all this stuff that you've heard before. There's still that capability and that play somewhere down inside of him, I think. So, and maybe a change in destination is exactly what he needs, Now, granted, it hasn't looked great with him working with a young quarterback, and, we'll see how he gels with the culture of Chicago versus a New York, but they both feel like, blue collar, kind of working class, cities tough teams with their identity because of it. So I don't know, but man, I think this is a team that just needs a wide receiver, obviously. And I mean, some other fits I thought about, Green Bay could make some sense here. The Rams, if they're looking to add for cheap, reunite Stafford and Golladay just running go balls, I could see that. So a couple of different destinations I think could make sense if the Giants are willing to eat a significant portion of his salary. I just think Chicago should be the team to, pull the trigger, because, I mean, what do you have to lose? If it doesn't work, then you're not paying his full salary anyways. And then you at least can say, yeah, well, we saw Justin Fields with Kenny Golladay, and, Kenny Golladay, you can at least fall back on that a little bit if you're willing to give up on him that early. Anyways, stick with the wide receiver position. Next up, Nelson Agholor. This is my Robbie Anderson replacement to the Chargers, just because I think this is a team that needs to add that deep speed element in their offense. Honorable mention for the Ravens, but they are signing Deshaun Jackson now. 35-year-old D-Jax. We'll see if he stays healthy, but they have been a team that I have harped on this 1,000 times over. They've got to add that speed element, that guy who, when safety's creeping in the box, they can go over the top and beat you. D-Jack still has that speed, so could work out. But for the Chargers, it's more so about egging on like Justin Herbert. They need somebody who can open up the offense vertically. And, Jalen Guyton had some of that, and you see Josh Palmer do some of it, but not somebody with the speed of Robbie Anderson, a Nelson Aguilar. If they wanted to sign a Will Fuller, it feels like he's probably just not going to play this year. But that being said, that type of speed is a little different than like what Guyton and Palmer have. So I think adding an Aguilar in there. Now, granted, this is the first of two Patriot wide receivers you'll see. The next one is actually on the next screen. So I don't know, especially coming off the big win and, blowing out the Lions 2 weeks ago and then the Browns last week. Are the Patriots really going to be sellers? Probably not. But these two wide receivers both do feel redundant in the offense, / they have already made it pretty clear they want to get out. So for Aguilar, it's more so the redundancy, problem here is Tyquan Thornton scored 2 touchdowns in, his first, taste of NFL action. He has that speed profile. That was really the only thing I really liked about him coming out of Baylor. I thought the second round was a little rich, but hey, if New England's going to make it work, they're going to make it work. So, having a Tyquan Thornton might make Aguilar a little redundant in the offense. So they could part ways with him. It's the last year of his contract, signed a 2-year deal a couple off seasons ago. So it could be something where it's like, hey, we don't plan on bringing back Aguilar. So if we can catch, any sort of asset, great. And then for the Chargers, it's like, okay, now we got that 4-3 speed type of dude where, hey, Herbert, dude, just like trust your arm, lead this dude in stride. And, Joe Lombardi, offense coordinator, get plays where this guy's open down the field. Let's expand the offense. Let's stop running sticks and slants. Let's open this playbook up a little bit. And then think about what he could do as the guy who you have to respect their speed. But once Keenan Allen's back, or even Mike Williams running intermediate routes, this guy as your clear out dude, because you have to respect his speed, opens up the offense that much more. And then next thing you know, Herbert's pepper in the middle of the field because DBs are having to play a step behind Mike Williams or Keenan Allen. I just think all in all, this would be just a small move that really could give huge benefit to open up that offense. Anyways, let's move on to the other Patriots wide receiver now. Kendrick Bourne, it feels like this is just a matter of time now. Even dating back to training camp, this has been a really weird relationship after he was the best wide receiver last year for New England. He was one of my sneaky breakout candidates, actually, if you want to go all the way back deep into the ethers of my channel. He was a guy I noted in New England, had a chance to kind of prove himself. And, I think that's part of what I like about this idea of a fit in Jacksonville is like, hey, he looked good with Mac Jones to rookie. He's proven that, I don't know what led to the situation souring now, but based off what I saw last year, have a hard time thinking it's because he's playing with a young quarterback. So add him in to a situation he's familiar with. And then if he's just another guy who can win on the outside, and if he were to even step up and be like target one, he wouldn't be a great leading man or anything like that. But if he's your number one guy, then Christian Kirk's getting easier matchups. And then Zay Jones. And really, I look at it from the perspective of like, Kendrick Bourne would probably draw the number one outside corner. Christian Kirk continues to live out of the slot, and then Zay Jones might get some easier matchups. I just think adding one more guy who can win on the outside, and Bourne's profile as a polished route runner, smooth, great hands, can work the intermediate parts of the field between the hashes. I think adding one more guy from the outside spot could be that traditional X possession type. I think that opens up this offense that much more. And then again, you're just getting a deeper and more complete understanding of who Trevor Lawrence is as quarterback and trying to get a full evaluation. So I really don't think it's a move that would cost much. So it's kind of a no-brainer to me for Jacksonville because like he won't cost you a whole lot, both financially but also draft assets. And then it's just like, hey, that's a guy who's proven to win on the outside with young wide receivers. So add him into our offense, add him into the mix, and I think you'd actually just kind of serve well with Doug Peterson. I think that would be a good fit for that offense. So then again, easier matchups ideally for Zay Jones and Christian Kirk there. So that's kind of my rationale there. Let's move on to Isaiah Wynn, another Patriots player on the move. I guess I did a little flurry here, but that's another really weird relationship. And, honorable mention to the Raiders, who could think about him as a guard or a tackle. The Chargers, if they wanted to patch up that right tackle position, as Trey Pipkins was just getting manhandled by the Broncos pass rush on Monday Night Football. But, I decided to go with the Bengals because this is a guy who's played left tackle and played right tackle too. So you have some insurance just in case Tyron Still maybe, or Lyle Collins, thinking of the wrong Cowboys right tackle. Thinking Lyle Collins, if that doesn't work out, you have Isaiah Wynn as a, backup plan essentially. But I'm really thinking that like, hey, Cordell Volson isn't ready to play right now. You might be able to get Isaiah Wynn, who some people the draft, his draft process saw him as a guard anyway, so he could be a plug and play improvement over there at left guard. You could even do something where maybe you keep Isaiah Wynn at left tackle and you're moving Jonah Williams inside to play guard. Maybe, I think this just gives you some options. And, again, this has been the problem unit still for Cincinnati despite all the investments. So why not continue to, put chips in the center table until you find, a fix there. And this is a team. This is just one of those teams, right? Green Bay. We'll talk about Tampa Bay later. We'll talk about Cincinnati, where it's like you haven't fully hit your expectations, but you're still a contender. So, like, what can you do to get yourself back on track and meet those expectations? So, and then looking at it from a Pats perspective, considering they're shopping him, really doesn't feel like they plan on bringing him back. So anything you can get for him feels like more than you would if he left in free agency. So I think that's totally something that the Patriots are considering here. So next up, Cam Akers. This is kind of the guy I was thinking about, like, when making this video. He might already be dealt by the time you're seeing this, so I do apologize. But, for Denver, it's like you lost Javonte Williams. Why not add another young running back in the mix? Melvin Gordon's been injured. He's had some fumble issues as well, so maybe less of him seeing the football and more of Cam Akers. I think that makes sense. The problem is maybe, Akers and Mike Boone are a little redundant. Their skill sets, both fast, can both work the third down game. So maybe, that's overkill, but also I could see where it's like, hey, that means less touches for Melvin Gordon, and we'll have a 1-2 punch of Akers and Boone and just kill people with speed. And they'll, defense will have to respect both of them as pass catchers. I think that ultimately kind of creates an interesting opportunity to, nudge that offense along, and maybe it's just incorporating more running backs into their offensive philosophy. So and then for the Rams, they're actively trying to trade him. So anybody will take him, and he's not in the same division because I was like, oh well, maybe the 49ers. Oh well, that's not going to happen. Or maybe Seattle's looking for depth. Oh well, that's not going to happen. So it's not an NFC West team. And some of these trades, it was like, damn, like some of these fits would be great, including the next one. I was like, man, if only this guy could go in the same division. But, for the Rams, anybody will take him. Great. For the Broncos, it's like, hey, we have an opening, and this guy could prove to be somebody we can lean on long term. So let's move on to the next one of those guys, Sidney Jones. I was like reading stuff and reading reports, trying to get a feel for what teams are looking for, potential trade deadline fits. And 49ers could use a corner. I was like, oh, dude, Sidney Jones would be the guy. Oh, wait, Seattle's not going to do that. So Seattle here sends him to Minnesota, and I think the rationale there is like you look at the PFF grades for Pat Peterson and basically every corner not named Cam Dantzler, and it's rough. So it really doesn't take much to try to get an upgrade there, or minimum. Like, is Pat Pete going to be able to stay healthy the entire year? I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that, but you have to think about it. So if you have to think about it, it's probably worth having a contingency policy here. And Sidney Jones, over the last couple of years, since he returned to Seattle, hasn't been quite as good. Actually had some better years of grading in Jacksonville, but nonetheless, always at his best is kind of a traitsy, decent corner. Like, his athletic ability is more so what brings out his good play, but he has the capability of being average-ish. And for a Minnesota team, average-ish might be an upgrade outside besides Cam Dantzler. So one reason to consider it there, but also if like Pat Pete does go down, it's like, okay, we have an average-ish corner in the wings waiting to step in for a team that only got one loss. You're going to potentially need that depth once you get late regular season into the postseason. So I think it makes a lot of sense there for Minnesota trying to find an upgrade, but also just kind of gearing up for the postseason run. And for Seattle, like, Tariq Woolen's been awesome. I'd rather see Kobe Bryant out on the field, getting those reps and getting valuable playing time. And Sidney Jones hasn't really seen the field a whole lot this year anyway, so he's barely playing. I have a hard time thinking they're going to have him get on the field over the young guys, because that just makes no sense to this point, especially considering Woolen's been awesome. And then for Minnesota, adding depth or a potential starter, I think that move makes a ton of sense to me. But, the 49ers, honorable mention there if they did want to do one in division. And then this is probably my favorite trade. I just think this fit makes a ton of sense. Houston is looking to, and they've done this the last couple of years, they'll sign these veterans, get some good play, and they'll flip them. And Jerry Hughes has been doing the heavy lifting in the pass rush department. He leads the team in hurries, pressures, got 4 sacks. It's tied for a team best. And this is a Houston team that needs to figure out what Jonathan Grenard and Opunaya Okoronkwo, or what are those guys? So moving on from Hughes might make that team worse, but it will allow them to get an evaluation of, are we going to re-sign Okoronkwo? Is Grenard somebody that we're going to give a second contract to? So they might get worse in the process, but I think you need to get answers to those questions. And then Jerry Hughes goes to a team that could use a third pass rusher, right? Like, even last week against Pittsburgh, a team with a bad offensive line, that pass rush was struggling. Joe Tryon-Shinka has not graded well in PFF systems. And Shaq Barrett has been decent. He's been pretty solid, but still hasn't really gotten back to where he was, the year they won the Super Bowl, at least that first half of that first year, or that first half of the year that the Bucs won the Super Bowl. So maybe adding a third guy in here that's just a proven, capable, racks up hurries, pressures, and been decent this year, turning those into sacks. had a long track record of being a very productive pass rusher in Buffalo. Maybe just adding one more guy into that mix for Tampa Bay, and he's the third guy running on or rushing on third and longs, obvious passing situations. I think that could be a nice add, and that's kind of the one missing piece for this Tampa Bay defense. And I even said this in the preseason, as we were getting ready for the regular season. I was like, ideally on paper, Joe Tryon-Shank and Shaq Barrett should be enough. But if not, they might need to add a third. And I think they've come to a situation where it's like, yeah, we need to add a third. I think Jerry Hughes is on the move. It doesn't really make sense for Houston to really keep him, considering he's not going to be on the Super Bowl potential, the quote-unquote Super Bowl roster in 2 years, kind of what the Texans are trying to build towards. So might as well dish him out, get some assets, try to get more swings to the bat so you can get to that quote-unquote ideal Super Bowl roster. And then for Tampa Bay, it doesn't fix the offense. That's a headache in and of itself, but makes you feel that much better about that defense and that pass rush in specific. So love that trade. It's probably my favorite on this video, just because I think the fit and the player would be such a nice add for Tampa Bay. But that again goes back to really the whole root of this video. It wasn't about trade competition. It was about players, needs, and fits. So tell me what you think down below about these 12 trades in the comment section. What fits do you like? Which ones do you think I'm crazy on? What names should have been on this list as potential trade candidates? And if there was a name on this list you think should go to a different destination, I'd love to hear your take why. So let me hear your thoughts. There's conversation down below. I respond to every comment, so let's talk about it in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, it helped me out a ton if you hit that like button. If you're new right here, want to see more football content, join the fun, hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Until next time, my name is Teej. I'm signing off.